horror is dead and we killed it. Thank you for joining my TED Talk. Have a good day. Fine, there have been like 2 good horrors recently, but ask any real horror fan and they're all going to tell you that this is still a far cry from the standard set by Silent Hill 2. Where did we as a society take the wrong path and ultimately cursed humanity to a steaming pile of shitty horror games? Got you good, huh? That was scary, huh? Wrong! That's the lowest form of scares, and that's what 80% of games rely on nowadays. When I play a horror game, I want my fears and feelings to be challenged. I want to dig deep into my subconscious and be reminded that underneath this old, classy, fascinating shield, I'm still a little bitch. All jump scares do is just sticking a needle into my amygdala to trigger the most basic fight-or-flight reaction, and all I'm left with are disappointment and the memory of widespread popularity of lobotomy in the 20th century. I consider them the gaming equivalent of an old haunted house attraction. With the difference that in those things there's at least the psychological torture of not knowing whether the guy dressed as a killer clown is currently going through his meth withdrawal or not.
You didn't get me meth?
But the main fact is that modern horror jump scares typically kill the tension. Horror, after all, is made of ups and downs, a constant crescendo that ultimately gets some form of resolution. But the resolution ultimately releases all that bottled-up anxiety, so it should only coincide to events like ending a level or the player being killed. What most games do instead is using jump scares to start things off, or to just make sure you're still awake and not sleeping with the controller in your hands. But I am awake, game, somehow, and that at this point I'm just bored. Oh wow, the big spooky monster jumped into my room. Please let me introduce you to my big ass shotgun. The only good jump scare ever created was the one at the beginning of Mulholland Drive. Facts! Because a good jump scare is unexpected enough while still being built onto the tension. Rule number 1. The only good jump scare in gaming is the one that is not obviously scripted. Hide-and-seek horrors are not scary. Facts. I talked about this on my Amnesia Debunker video already, but nobody watched it, so fuck it, let's go down this path again. Whenever I see a developer trying to pull that shit, all I can think of is that they're probably 12, and haven't yet understood that real life and video games are 2 very different things. You're alone, at night, in the street of Paris, but not the nice part. We're talking about some 19e arrondissement kind of shit. And you hear some Babadook screaming in the distance, so you're scared as shit. That is, in real life. But if it's a game, fuck that, I'm 100% safe. And not just because I haven't showered in 3 days and nobody would get close to me without getting gangrene in their nose. Real life is unpredictable, but games need to follow a specific rule set. And when it comes to hide-and-seek horror games, the main rule is, if you designer put me in a situation where I can't escape, then your dumb bus monster can't attack me. What it means is that I can easily predict how your next scare is going to play. Oh, you need me to use this lever? Well, if I had a gun, the monster could come out of any corner, but given the fact that I can't defend myself, I'm going to guess that it's going to appear from there, so it can escape through that door. Because there's no other option. And that's the best case scenario. Other times devs just go, who's got time for this shit? We need to work on those damn graphics for our next trailer. And they just let the monster attack you whenever it wants. So now we're switching from hide and seek to trial and error. Rule number 2. Always give me a fucking weapon. saves and your autosave will never know the sense of dread we older players used to feel back in the days, when at any moment you knew that if your mom stepped on your PS1's power cable or a blackout happened, you'd lose all your progress from the last hour. Yes, you little baboons, even playing the fucking Smurfs game was a horror experience for us. Before we all realized that nothing awaits us beyond the dark void, the concept of death used to be maybe frustrating, but still very efficient. Resident Evil games pretty much revolved around their ink ribbons and their scarcity, and as a result, dying in those games carried some real terror, specifically the fact that you'd have to see all those door animations all over again. Today instead, games autosave so fucking much that even an enemy encounter can be split in multiple checkpoints. God forbid I actually have to put an effort to be good at your game, but I guess you devs are just very eager to see me squint at the next scripted jumpscare, aren't you? But as much as death usually represents the main way to punish the player for a failure, there are other ways you can make me scared of clamorously fucking up. You can make it so that my inability to complete a puzzle results in the death of another character, or me getting into a fight will make me be too late to save them. I would actually say that it's even a better way to punish me than just having my character die, because when I die I can just restart from the last checkpoint, but when they die, I know that from there on out the story will have to continue without them. Or I can just save scum, but you're not one of those people, are you? Those supermassive games pretty much exist entirely around this premise. Shame they're all titles of various degrees of mediocrity. Rule number 3. Don't be afraid to punish the player, just be fair about it.
I'm sorry, what? Robonob, are you trying to play coy, contradicting yourself in the span of 15 seconds just so you can make your already clickbaity video even more insufferable?
No.
Okay, continue.
The possibility of failing is a central component of any challenge, but it's also true that it represents a release of tension. I think that if I'm going to use the expression release of tension anymore, I'm going to be hit by vocabulary for how poor my choice of word is getting. So I'm just gonna call it Scary Badaboom. So, regardless of genre, whenever you get close to winning, you're tense, and no matter if you fail or succeed, you get Scary Badaboom. But while victory means that now you're going to face a new enemy or situation, failure means you're going to repeat what you just did. This can be fine for most genres, but not for horror. Unpredictability is key to make the experience scary. I can see the same spooky creature popping up in the boiler room only so many times before the fright turns to mundane and the mundane to just frustrating. Basically, while we previously said that failure should have a tangible consequence, it should also impact our subsequent attempts. It might sound difficult, but there are plenty of ways to achieve that. You could just randomize the displacement of your AI, or add the number of enemies, or crazy thought. Be more creative. Take a pinnacle example of horror here, the Souls games.
Bruh.
Okay, technically not an horror, but those games still scared me more than whatever shit passes for spooky nowadays, so I'm counting them in.
What the fuck is going on?
The signature blood pool containing all our souls from the moment before our death is a perfect way to change things up, from one death to the other. Sure, the enemies are still in the same position, but this time you have a new source of tension stemming from the fact that you also need to retrieve your souls, which might have ended up in a very tough spot. Bloodborne took it one step further so that you might have had to actually kill a specific enemy in order to get back your stuff. And good fucking luck if it was one of these assholes. And even if retrieving those souls is a scary badaboom, you still have to survive until you reach the next bonfire. So good luck, shithead. Rule number 4. Be creative with the ways player can experience repeated sections of your game. One of the worst ways a scary badaboom can happen is in a way that only modern gaming could craft. The cinematic bullshit. I already hardly digest that stuff as is, but in other games it's simply unacceptable. Whenever a set piece or in-game cutscene is triggered where some cum dongle monster tries to chop my head off and replace it with a teddy bear, my heartbeat immediately starts following Zack Snyder's movie quality track record. You might think that this shit could startle me, but all it's really telling me is that you, the designer, are now in charge, and you're gonna turn this whole thing into a tour ride where you'll make sure I take long looks at the high quality texture of this blood splatter. Rule number 5. Cutscene only for starty or endy sections, or I'm gonna get stabby. Fear of the unknown is fear itself. Only great quotes in this channel. When something is explained and understood, it can hardly be feared. If it is, it's called a phobia, and that's another thing. But you're welcome to learn new stuff from me today. As such, the plot of a game should leverage this as much as possible. It's a hard balance to maintain, admittedly. On one hand, you need to provide answers to the biggest questions the player has, but on the other, answering too much will kill any aura of mystique you manage to build. In Hollywood, they call this the Lost effect. I prefer calling it the Death Stranding effect. That is to say that if you want to write a story that actually has something to say rather than just make you go ew when some dismemberment appears on screen, which, by the way, they're still fun, you are going to write a psychological horror story. But if you are, then you have also to follow the rules of the Lovecraftian horror story. I can already see some of you demanding my head on a stake, but you can sit and shut up. What I'm trying to say is that Lovecraftian horror is supported by two core elements: the already mentioned fear of the unknown and the ephemeral role of a man in face of the bigger threat. The second should be easy to understand. You want the player to never feel like they're the ones who have control over their enemies. But I'm fairly sure that most devs don't really get the first part. If they did, they'd stop describing their games set in Lovecraft stories as Lovecraftian horrors.
Oh god, another contradiction?
Not really this time, dear viewer. Just tell me what's unknown about Cthulhu or the fish people from Innsmouth. That stuff has already been thrown into the pop culture's digestive system and shut out like a bad Taco Bell dinner, so now the only way it can be scary is wondering whether or not there's a scary Coca-Cola hidden in that pile of crap. Rule number 6. Try to have your first original thought since the time you tried to do some weird motions with your wee-wee and discovered earthly pleasures.